Yeah, so this happened to me 10 years ago. I was in Kroger in Dallas, Texas, when this man approached me and he asked me if he could read my hand. And what happened next, y'all, it left me shook to my core. And so I'm going to share my story with y'all, tell you exactly what happened. But then also, most importantly, I want to share with you why spiritual discernment is so essential, especially in this season. Also, how the enemy preys on our spiritual vulnerabilities and how you can protect your spirit from voices that are masquerading as the light, but they're really from the dark side. Okay, y'all. So I'm just going to jump right into the story. I just thank God for his grace. I thank him for his protection. And I thank God, most importantly, for his discernment. Okay. So, like I said, over 10 years ago, I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. I was engaged to be married. I think it was like 2012. It was around 2012, and I was in Kroger. I was standing on the magazine aisle, and this older black man, this older gentleman, he approached me. He was probably like in his mid 50s or something like that. He had this smooth brown skin. He was well manicured, and he just looked like he could be a father figure, right? And so the fact that he looked so familiar, like he could be somebody from my community, that is what kind of unarmed me. I didn't feel any threat, like no harm, none of that. I didn't feel any of that. And so as I'm standing there, he starts to talk to me just out the blue. And then he told me, he said something to the extent of, "You're just as beautiful as the people on these magazines, but you can't even see it." So when he made that comment, I was like, wow, like he obviously read something in my spirit, right? I was giving off something and he read that, because at the time I was dealing with low self-worth. I didn't know my worth. I had low self-confidence, low self-esteem. I just had all the things going on, okay? Because I was overcoming various levels of traumas that I had experienced throughout my life. And so he spoke to that piece of me. And so it kind of felt like kind words from a stranger at the time. And that was another level of disarming now when I look back on it, because I actually shared this story on Threads also. And a lot of people pointed out that the enemy will actually start off with flattery to actually disarm you. And so he will start off with encouragement to get you to let your guard down. And so for me in that moment, I really did feel like it was encouragement, because he was telling me that I was just as beautiful as the people on the covers, and I just couldn't see it. And it felt like he was really seeing into the depths of my souls, like the things that I've struggled with, like all the parts of me, that I struggle with. I didn't really struggle with my outer beauty, but it was my confidence, my voice, my ability to show up as who I truly was. Those are the areas where I struggled with my worth and confidence and things like that. So anyway, he asked me if he could read my hand. Now listen, I was a lot hesitant. I was a little bit hesitant, okay? Because I know about fortune telling. And for me, that's a no. That's not something that I believe in. That's not something that I would never intentionally go up and allow somebody to do, right? But we were in the middle of a grocery store, y'all. He was older and nothing felt threatening in that moment. So I was like, okay, I let my guards down and I just let him. I gave him my left hand. And I remember he opened it, and then he took the tip of his index finger and then he started like rubbing it back and forth like along the lines of my hand. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is kind of wild, right? I was like, this dude is not about to tell me anything real. I thought I was just kind of like humoring somebody. Kind of like when your kid be like, "Oh, mom, look, I got this magic trick to show you," and you go along with it, and it's like, okay, they just been a kid. That's how it felt. That's how it felt. But then he looked up, and then he started telling me things about my life that he could not have possibly known. I mean, he's a complete stranger to me, right? Never seen this man a day in my life. He told me the name of my dad, y'all. He told me the first name of my dad. And that's when I kind of perked up a little bit. And then he told me that I had previously lost a child before. And y'all, that wasn't something that was public knowledge. That wasn't something that I just really shared at the time like that. So now I'm just standing there with my heart pounding, and I'm literally getting scared. I'm like, whoa, pump your brakes, sir. Pump your brakes. I'm like, who are you? Like, who are you? Who sent you? Where did you come from? And I guess he could sense the fear in my face and the worry. And so out of nowhere, he was just like, don't worry, I come in the name of Jesus. And, I guess he tried to say that to comfort me. But when he said that, it actually, I didn't really know how to feel. Part of me was still unsure, but I know it felt kind of weird, right? So then what came next shook me to my core. It shook me to my absolute core. He actually told me that somebody close to me was going to die, and he was very specific. It was somebody who I love and adore very much so. And then he told me like all the things that was going to happen to my life after this. And that's when I was just like, okay, stop. Like, I don't want to know no more. Don't tell me no more. I don't want to hear nothing else. Right. I was visibly, I was shaking. Like, I was probably even like physically shaking too. Like, my hands probably were shaking. I just remember being terrified. Right. Because at that point, everything else he said before that went out the window. And all I could focus on was the fact that he just told me that somebody close to me was going to die. And so I shared this story to say that everybody who uses the name of Jesus is not always operating in the Spirit of God. Some people are operating under familiar spirits, manipulation spirits, and demonic insights. Okay, just because somebody come up to you and say that God told me or God told me to tell you, listen, that's the favorite line that people like to say. God told me to tell you. Okay, well, if God told you to tell me, why he ain't told me yet? Right? Why haven't he told me yet? And that's why sometimes I'm weary of people who always use God, 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 God. Because it's like, you got to look at the fruit behind it. Listen, I love God. I love God and I call on his name too. But what I'm saying is that you got to be mindful of who you allow to speak in your life. Test the spirit of these people who are giving you a word, because not everybody who uses the name of God is doing so in the right spirit. Okay. If somebody telling you they're a prophet, they don't automatically mean that they were sent by God either. They definitely don't mean they'll automatically sit by God just because they say they're a prophet. In 2 Corinthians 11:14, it says that Satan himself masquerades as the angel of light. And that was written when Paul was trying to warn the church of Corinth about all of the false apostles and the deceitful workers that of the people who are trying to undermine the true gospel. And if that was happening back then, you better believe it's happening even more right now. The enemy will disguise himself as the angel of light just to get you to drop your guard down. And that's why it's so important to be so vigilant in this season and to walk in full discernment and to recognize what's real and what's not. And y'all, what we're experiencing today is not new. None of this is new. Just think back to the story of Adam and Eve. What happened when Adam and Eve was in their garden? God told them to not eat from the tree. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? And what did the little crafty serpent, the little devil, come and do when he came up, when he slithered up to them? What did he do? Because he came in so smooth. He came in appearing to be nice, kind. He was offering advice, offering what seemed to be like wisdom. And he came up to Eve and he asked her, did God really tell you that? Did he really say that? Right? Did God really tell you not to eat from that tree? You see what he did? He tried to plant doubt. And Eve responded, yeah. He said that surely, we're gonna die if we eat from this tree. And the devil was like, girl, you ain't gonna die. Well, I mean, what he talking about? You're not gonna die. In fact, let me tell you what's gonna happen. What's gonna happen is that God knows that if you eat the apple, your eyes are gonna be open and you're going to be just like him. You're going to know good from evil. You're going to be wise. You're going to be all knowing. I mean, he pumped it up and made it sound so good. So what did Eve do? Even though God told her specifically not to, what did Eve do? She ate the apple. And here's the kicker part. Not only did she eat the apple, she turned it around and gave it to her beloved, handsome husband, Adam. Now that's a whole nother word. That is a whole nother word in itself, because that lends to the company we keep. How the people we're connected to can influence our downfall and can be our downfall just by being attached to them. But anyway, they ate the fruit, they disobeyed God, and then what happened? Suffering followed, pain followed. And here we are. But here's why I'm telling you that story, because it shows how easy it is for the enemy to come into your life and come in disguised as a friend, a helpful servant, when the whole time he's over there plotting on your downfall. But I also want to share this with you because I want you to be just as mindful of this as well, because this is another trap. It is like the ultimate trap. Spirits can discern too, y'all. Spirits can discern too, especially when you're lacking confidence, when you are emotionally vulnerable, when you are struggling with your self-worth, all of that. Like when you're struggling with all the things in your life, they can discern that too. And this actually opened the doors for the wrong people and the wrong spirits to become attached to you. Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know. I'm gonna tell you how I know. So, how I was sharing with y'all about the story of me dealing with low self-worth, right? And, all the things that came with that. So there came a time when, I started to date. I was emotionally vulnerable. I guess you can say I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and I wanted to be validated. And even though, thought I was going to find love and validation in men. But the issue was that all of the men who, I got in a relationship with, those relationships ended up becoming abusive, from verbal abuse, physical abuse, and it was just like a constant cycle of me getting in those type of relationships over and over and over. And you would probably wonder, like, okay, if you're getting in relationships like that over and over and over, then obviously you have to be the problem, right? I mean, that's a common misconception that people say when they see something happening over and over and over. They call it insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Insanity, right? And again, the world may try to blame you. They may be thinking that you brought it onto yourself, right? But the thing is, for me, it wasn't that I was necessarily bringing it on myself or doing anything wrong. The issue was that I simply did not know my worth. I didn't know my worth, right? And those people, they sensed that. They sensed that I was helpless and that I didn't know who I was and that I didn't fully rest in my identity and my worth. And so I attracted those type of spirits. So I attracted those type of spirits of people who were ready to prey on somebody who was vulnerable. And how did they prey? In the form of abuse, in the form of speaking down to me, in the form of tearing me down. But the kicker is that when they came like they were very loving people, like they really cared for me and that they were really in my corner and they wanted the best for me and all those things. But it ended up being the total opposite. And so spirits can absolutely discern you, which is why it is so important, so important to be guarded. It is so important to be spiritually grounded, right? And to know your worth in Christ so that can't nobody step to you wrong. And then if they do step to you wrong, then you're going to be able to discern it. You're going to be able to know what time it is, right? And so that's why even now, like if you have kids, I think it's so important as parents for us to show our kids, the love that they need. Even so, we have a daughter, and my husband makes sure to speak life into her, to take her out on dates and to buy her things. Like all of those things are so important because later in life, when it's time for her to start dating, first of all, parents got to show up and we got to be the first ones to sow into our kids. We got to be the first ones to pour into them. We got to be the first ones to show them their worth. And so, later on when they do start dating, and, can't nobody just step to them easy. You know what I'm saying? Can't nobody, if you coming, you gotta come with it. And so we have to make it harder for those unclean spirits to step into their life, because if they know their worth, they're not going to just be willing to accept any and everything. They're not going to be looking for love in places where they don't have to, right? And so yeah, anybody who steps to them got to come hard. So that's why it's so important. But I just wanted to mention that piece because y'all, spirits can absolutely discern you. You actually may be wondering why in your life you've been attracting a certain kind of issue all the time, a certain problem, and it is coming to you over and over and over. Like, why am I attracting the same lessons in life? Why are these lessons coming over to me over and over and over and over and over? And 9 times out of 10, it probably has something to do with you not knowing your worth in that particular area. Because once you know your worth in that area, usually the lesson passes and you don't have to repeat it anymore. Like that's just been what I've experienced in my own life. And so this is why I wanted to share all of this with you, because y'all, that part of my life could have broken me. It could have literally broken me to the point of no return. But at the end of the day, you know what kept me? My faith. My faith kept me in those dark moments, and that's why I lean so heavily on it, because my faith is something that never left me when I was down, and so I'm grateful for that. I know the importance of having faith, because faith gives you hope. You can be in the darkest seasons of your life, but if you got faith, that means that you have a hope for a greater tomorrow. Now, it gets scary when you start to lose faith, and you start to lose hope, because now you have nothing to look forward to. And so that's why I'm always, always encouraging everybody I know to keep the faith, keep the faith, keep the faith. Never give on your faith, no matter what's going on. Because if you keep the faith, you can overcome any obstacle. You can see that there's a brighter future for tomorrow. You know that you're going to come out of your situation. You're not going to stay in bondage there, right? You know that is not the end of the rope for you. But if you lose faith, if you lose hope, then it can take you to a dark, tumultuous time of your life. So this is why, even whatever you experience in life, whatever you got going on, just know that at the end of the day, if you keep your faith, if you hold on to that, you will come through the other side. I promise you that. Like, that's something I don't make promises, but that's something I can promise, because, God is not going to leave you. He's not going to forsake you. He's going to see you through, and faith pleases him. So you have to keep the faith even throughout the toughest seasons of your life. So at the end of the day, be mindful. Be mindful of the people who you're allowing into your life. Be mindful of how you show up. Again, people can sense what you got going on. Also in business, y'all, guard your heart, guard your mind, guard how you show up there too. One thing I've learned in business when it comes to how you show up, if you ever show up desperate, people are absolutely going to take advantage of that. So you have to not only pray for discernment for your life, but you got to pray for guidance. You have to pray for patience and for protection. Don't let your guards down in these streets. Spiritual discernment is so important, because it's not just about knowing, good from evil, but it's also about knowing God's truth from deception. And deception is running rampant in these streets, right? It's about knowing the difference between somebody twisting his words into something that it's not. And so discernment is a gift, and God will absolutely give it to you. All you have to do is pray for it. You just have to seek it. You just have to desire it. Discernment has been one of the greatest blessings in my life. It helps to protect your destiny. That's what it does. It helps to protect your destiny. Discernment will also show you the spirit behind people, right? You can be in a room, and you know what? Sometimes, honestly, discernment feels like a blessing and a curse. I can't even lie, because when you have discernment, you can be talking to a person and know exactly what spirit is operating behind them. You can read things, like you can see things, you can feel things. It's kind of like being a empath, but turned up 10,000 times, right? And so the beauty in that is that it does provide protection. You just got to not override it. Just don't try to override it. Let it do what it do. And it does provide protection. But then the opposite side of that is that sometimes it's often going to make you feel isolated, because you're able to see things and feel things that other people can't. I can't really explain it. I saw a post the other day on Facebook, something along the line about the one thing about having discernment is being able to discern your Judas and having to be quiet about it, not being able to say anything about it, something like that, right? But that is so real. That is so real. That is exactly what having discernment is like, because again, you're going to see things, you're going to be able to discern things, and then you can't always speak on it. Sometimes you have to keep things to yourself, because again, it's a gift of protection. It shows you how to maneuver and how to move throughout your life. And so that's the gift that God wants his children to have, because he wants you to be protected. So you just got to use it in that way and not allow it to burden you with other things that you may see. I hope this story was very encouraging to you. I just want to let you know, do not be afraid. God did not give you the spirit of fear. He just wants you to be equipped. Like I said, pray for discernment. If God gives you a word from somebody, he's going to confirm it directly with your spirit, either before or after. So if somebody comes to you and tell you something about your life, and maybe they're foreshadowing it and you don't know yet, like God haven't told you yet, just know that confirmation is going to come after that. God is going to show you something in relation to after that. It's not just going to be a standalone word, right? Or maybe somebody confirms something to you God already showed you initially, and somebody comes behind and they gave you a word that was in confirmation for that, right? Just think about something. An example would be if you were going to write a book, and if you already know you're going to write a book, if you already got a book on your soul, and then somebody comes up to you and say, hey, God put it on my heart to tell you need to write a book. Your story needs to be told. That would be an example of confirmation because God had already placed that thing on your spirit first. And then somebody just came behind him and confirmed it, right? And then the opposite, like I said, somebody may come to you first and then it get confirmed later. So just be vigilant in this season, y'all. Pray for discernment. Ask God to show you, say, Lord, help me to see people the way that you see them. Help me to see people the way that you see them. Expose every spirit around me that is not of you, right? We live in a very spiritual world, and the older I get, the more I realize this, right? Everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual, y'all. Everything is spiritual. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Also, come in and let me know your experience. Like if you've experienced something similar to this, if you've had somebody to speak something into your life that terrified you, that you knew wasn't of God, or on the flip side, if you had someone to speak something to your life that was confirmation from God and gave you peace, let me know, because I think, this, like I said, this is a spiritual world, but a lot of people are still in denial that this is a spiritual world. And I think when we share our stories, it helps other people to be able to see and to also be more cognizant and aware of their surroundings and who they allow to speak into their life, who they allow to pray for them, who they allow in their space, y'all. Like all of this stuff, the older I get, is just becoming even more like wow, like wow, yeah. So let me know in the comments. God is real, but spiritual warfare is also real, and so we need to be on the side of putting on the whole armor and fight for our life while we on this earth. Okay. Oh my gosh, that little thing just went off in the background. I have no idea how that even happened. Okay, God, I see you. I guess that means you co-signed this message. Okay. Anyway, y'all, have a phenomenal day and always keep the faith. Bet on you because God already did.